All right, Mr. Slot, welcome to the pod, dude.
Thanks, brother. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man. No, this is an episode I'm super excited for. I have a really interesting relationship with you in particular, man. I've seen every stage of growth of your companies, starting, all the way back from when, you found me on YouTube. You were just getting started. I got you to 20-ish a month, 30, something like this, and now you've worked with a million mentors, and I don't know who exactly you would credit directly, but dude, you just had your first $1 million month. When was it? November? You had your first $1 million month? That's insane, dude. Like, and I remember shooting you that text, like, dude, it's just so humbling to watch, honestly. It's very, very humbling, and I learn a lot by observation. And particularly before we started off the recording, I asked you, what do you want to talk about? And it's so neat. You said you just want to talk about leadership, you want to talk about operations, you want to talk about actually running a company. And so I think there's a lot of things we could do for the beginner tier people, people just getting started. We can hang out in that realm, but dude, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of value you can add, and that we can talk about, actually building. You talked before we kicked off the recording about building managers of different divisions of your company and how to keep eyes on every moving piece and actually how to make clean decisions as a company owner. And I think that those topics would be really beneficial for the right crowd. So we can kind of start wherever you want to start, dude. And I just want to say it's going to be probably one of my favorite podcasts, just because like I've seen every stage of evolution. And and this is me being very vulnerable with the audience. Like, I've had to really humble myself, because it's like, wow, like I helped you get started and then you flew. And so I've just had to like be like, man, dude, like what can I learn from this guy? And dude, it's just an amazing thing to get to call you a friend and be watching you make these decisions. And dude, you've really leveled up as a leader and as a company owner. So it's just a blessing to have you here, bro. So where do you want to start, man? I'll start wherever you want to start.
Yeah, I think what will be really valuable is if we start at the beginning, like, when I first met you, what we worked on, just so we can like also add value to the people that have kind
100%, dude.
Just because it wasn't just tactics, it was mainly like also, as you remember, like mindset, right? Because when I came to you, I was kind of lost. I had no direction, no clarity, like really on where to go. So for me at the beginning, what was invaluable was having you by my side, and it still is. And like when I was a beginner, I didn't really know what I had to focus on, but you made it incredibly simple. So just to talk a little bit about tactics first and then mindset.
Yeah.
So tactically, like I knew when I came in, you and I, we did that first Zoom session, and what Trey taught me was like a very simple model called, I believe, OCA. I don't exactly.
OMA. At the time I called it OMA, now I call it flywheel. Yeah. Organic market attraction. Yep.
That is it. And that framework alone, and maybe like you can put up a visual somewhere like on this podcast, that framework alone, I just absorbed it, visualized it every single day, and just implemented it, like, on the social media platform.
Yeah. I remember teaching you that, and then like that week you closed like 6 clients, and I was like, what? Like I wasn't even closing that many with that framework, bro. I was like, what are you doing? And it was a really, from that moment, I kind of knew that like you were really special, because I'd taught that to a lot of people. And then a lot of the students at the time would like overthink it, like overanalyze, dig into the little words that I'm saying. I'm like, no, dude, just move. And I think still to this day, you still have this posture. And I've seen you join the mastermind groups and work with it. And you have this capacity to, it's almost, and I'm not calling you dumb, but you have the ability to dumb down so that you can move. Yeah. I've often had the opposite problem, where I am almost like too intellectual about my approach. And so it just kind of stays cerebral. And so I've had to unlearn that. Now, at first, I had to be very cerebral to observe and learn. But like I've almost had to unlearn that so that I can simplify, and just move. And so I gave you that framework. And like I remember literally that week, you're like, dude, I just signed a client. Sign another one the same day. And I'm like, what the hell, dude? You're like 1 week in, and it's like you're blowing me out of the water. It was really cool to see. And it was very humbling, because I was like, I realized that the limitation of the framework wasn't the framework itself. It was the decision-making capacity and action levels of the person utilizing it. And it was really neat. It was like a Padawan and Jedi moment of like, oh, frick. All right. Like, and it really opened my mind up. So it was very cool.
And so is, 100%, man. And I guess like kind of as we're at the beginning stages, what I believe is valuable to cover too, because not everyone watching this podcast like knows my backstory.
Yeah.
Before I like came to Trey, like, or even before I started like this adventure of entrepreneurship, actually back in 2018 of December, worked a supermarket job, and I'll just keep these brief. And then basically with, like the start at entrepreneurship, I started with an agency. I got 2 clients with that. That was January 2019, all up the way to April 2019. And then in April 2019, I got an opportunity as an appointment setter at a 7-figure course company. And, long story short, when I received that opportunity, which was basically online, and, I still had college at the time, and like I was also still doing my supermarket job at the time, I got presented an opportunity where I basically had 2 options. It was either continue what I'm doing or pursue this opportunity that was presented to me. And I quite quickly, took the opportunity, and with that in 24 hours, which, I'm saying like right now on a podcast as if it was nothing, but like I basically dropped my college that I was working on for, basically years. I dropped my 2 supermarket jobs, which I mean, quite frankly, I don't really care about, but, still it was
guaranteed income. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I was still living with my parents, right? And then like I told my parents, like, hey mom, hey dad, like I just, decided to quit my job, and I'm also going to stop college, and I wanted to ask if it's cool to go to Serbia to become an appointment setter. Mm-hmm. And well, like guys, as we all traditional parents, you can imagine like the look on their faces, and, kind of imagine you bring it to your parents. That's basically the response to me, like, wait, what the hell are you saying?
So we're paying for this college tuition for you. You've got a job, you've got a future, and you're wanting to throw it all away to be a setter. And they're like, what even is a setter? And like, why is this worth throwing everything away for? Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And some context, with that, because like in March, right before I got an opportunity, just a month before, like I was already doing some appointment setting stuff, like, before I started like work, before I started college, during college, after college, in my free time. And like I made 2K in that month. And then basically when I decided to go to Serbia, and, like I got the thumbs up from my parents, when I was there, first of all, it was very, very tough because it's like an entire identity change, happening in a matter of just a couple of weeks. So went through that, and then basically, just to keep a long story short, I made 6K my first month, 8K my second, 10K my third. And then with that, like I experienced 6 months of really what it is like to attain all these skill sets in practice. And then in September 2019, that's where I came across Trey and basically started his mentorship. So that's kind of like just the backstory there, but then back to like kind of where we just, left off at, like with the organic marketing, attraction, that's what it's called. Really took it from there. And then basically when I started with Trey, my first month, I believe I did like 10K. Mm-hmm. And then in my second month, I did, I think like, maybe a little bit more, like 12K. And then I feel like somewhere in November, December, I hit like my first 30, 40K month. Mm-hmm. So that's like kind of the business side. And I truly believe you don't need to understand more than just like one simple marketing and sales model and just like delivering for the students you enroll at that time. And then that is kind of just tactical side. Like I don't believe if we give you 5 frameworks on this podcast that's going to help you. Like if you just can do one and you can do it right, that's going to do a lot more.
And I think still even today, you're still just simply doing like, from what I can tell, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's just like shout outs, Instagram organic, setting sales team. Like that's it. That's literally it. And it's in November, you had your first 7-figure month. So it's just one you still stick to that same mantra, just one traffic channel.
It is always the principles, man. It's always the principles. Yeah. And I guess like, before we go really deep into that, because that's a topic I love too, so we're really special, of course, too, Trey, because I met Danique, my partner, like while I was in your mentorship. And I remember, in our first month or first 2 months, I said like, man, this journey is like so lonely, dude. Like this is really, really painful. Mm-hmm. And then I remember I told you like, dude, I need a girlfriend. Or I think you told me like, dude, I think you need a girlfriend. I'm like,
yeah. I think I did say that. I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
And then I became quite intentional about it. And in October, like I basically met Danique, who, I've been with for like the last 3 years, and we live together here in this beautiful villa here in Portugal. Like also long story short there, we basically just, clicked very fast. We connected, basically met her in October 2019. And then after 3 months, we also moved back to Serbia. I even like left out the part where I went back to the Netherlands to meet Danique and, also lived there for a couple of months. But then, went to the Netherlands and then went back to Serbia with Danique. And then with that, just to also like kind of speed up the timeline here, I started we continued to like focus on the coaching company, and I partnered with Danique on that too. And then, like really where the crazy thing started to happen was, when I was basically starting under consulting, which is in October 2020. And when we launched in our first month, we did 100K in cash collected. But a little bit about, like the start of that, why I even started in the first place was because, I was just kind of tired of, just working with solely agency owners and like always talk about the same thing for like a year long. And then I basically started that, and I told the Nick, like, babe, even if we make like 5K with this venture, like that's cool with me. Like I just really want to get out of this space and like explore something else. And then like we basically went from doing the agency coaching to basically coaching consultants, coaches, experts like you're doing too. And then we basically hit 100K cash in the first month, which was surreal to me. And I think like you remember that moment too.
I do. It was like early 2020, I believe, or late 2019, right?
Yeah.
Sometime around then. Yeah.
October 2020, yeah. And then
That's
basically
right.
with that, yeah, we basically hit 100K in October 2020. And then we did that also like in November, December, and January. And in 2021 January, we basically hit 90K in cash. And then in, February, 160, March 230, April 330, I think June 430, and July like 500. So those were like really crazy jumps, but just also to add to that, like I was sacrificing something that I hold dear to me now, which was my health, right? Because during that time, I was just eating like one kebab a day,
I remember that. No, I remember it, and I remember you talking to me about it, and I was concerned for you, but I was also like, dude, you're crushing it. So like, I kind of get it. I was like, I kind of see why you're eating one kebab a day. All of these sales calls and all this prospecting and like, yeah, bro. I remember seeing this like clip that Danique posted of like you're like taking pre-workout and eating a kebab, and I'm like, bro, like it's not gonna last, dude. Like burning the fuse at both ends. But I mean, it got you to that level though, and I think you did a very smart thing, which is what you stabilized your company a little bit and started to take care of yourself a little bit so that you could stay at a similar level, And I very, very vividly remember that season because it was just like, yeah, dude. And I remember even challenging, like, bro, like you have to like eat more and you have to like sleep and you have to. But yeah, dude, you were at your own timing, and I think you ultimately subliminally knew what you were doing. I think you knew that the sacrifice would maybe eventually be worth it. But yeah, it was a very interesting season.
100%. Like, I just believe I've got a very obsessive personality that, like, when I do one thing, I just really go all in. And I think that stems from, like, my childhood too. Just when I was playing video games, I would just do that the entire day. Yeah. And I think it's kind of like where it's created, just double down on one thing, I guess keep it simple. So in that case, like when I was a child, it was just like, when I got home, I would just do one thing. And I can dive like a little bit more into my past later in this podcast, which is video games. And then, like with business, like it was just business. And even before business, it was just the gym, right? And, that translated definitely like into business. And that was like a belief that really helped me to become like the entrepreneur I am today. But then to like kind of continue to the growth trajectory there. So like, then basically from July 2021 all the way to December 2021, we, just basically maintained that mark for the reason you mentioned, like just to focus on my health and stabilize. And then also like at the end of the year, I basically started appointmentsetter.com, which is my second company. And, basically also too in the first month I did $100,000. And basically with that company, we help, beginners, 9-to-5ers become like an appointment setter, like, I was too at the beginning. And, with those two companies right now, so each one of them is doing 500K cash a month. And that's also too in November, how we basically hit $1 million a month. It's just like a 40-60 split basically between those two companies. So appointmentsetter.com averaging that, cash collected per month. And then consulting.com, like also averaging like 500-600 per month. But, as you know, like the coaching space, the coaching bubble always talks about like, 8 figures and cash collected and all that crap. And, I realized like with the point where I'm at now, I'm like, man, that's small thinking, and the coaching bubble went through it is like really just a small space. Like there's so much opportunity and so many vehicles out there. And so with that, like I basically concluded I'm going to be shutting one of my companies down to like really pursue something that is bigger long-term and also just something that excites me more because, as I share with you, Trey, like right now, my time is really strapped because of like, my companies, and I don't have a problem with working hard, but when you have the option to basically shut down a company and get all your time back, that's kind of like a decision I'm making right now, which, isn't an easy decision. But, I want to do something bigger, which again, I can also cover later in this podcast. But yeah, guys, that's in like, the last 10 minutes, like kind of just the whole backstory. And there's so much to say.
Very
about,
high level. Yeah, we could dig into any of those transition points and spend like 2 hours on it, because there's so many lessons that we could peel apart and find within what you just shared.
Yeah.
But let's do this. Let's talk about the season that you're in now and moving forward. And before we kicked off the podcast, we talked about, I think the thing that's making you capable of some of these market transitions that you're wanting to go through are ultimately the lessons in leadership and actually running a company. So, I think the reason why you're thinking bigger is you're realizing, oh, wait, like people are the ultimate leverage. And if I can build the company structure correctly, then I can succeed really in any industry. And I would suspect that that's what you're beginning to see. And so you're seeing that and you're like, okay, is the coaching space really where I want to have my like labor force built out, or do I want to move another direction, or do I want to move into another industry? And maybe talk a bit more about, what we talked about right before the podcast kicked off, of because we were both in mutual alignment. And I'm getting my company to this point now where I'm seeing the value of what you shared, of like having eyes on every single moving piece of your business so that you can make clean and clear decisions, and managing and leading people with vision. So maybe talk a bit about what role that's played in getting you to where you are now, and what role it will play in whatever transition you make.
Yeah, for sure. So a little backstory, right? Because as I shared with Trey and with you guys on the podcast, like my health was one of the things that was at its lowest points ever in 2021. And so I decided in 2022 to make it like, the complete opposite. So one of my priorities. And, as I did that, I realized when I started to take care of myself through good dieting, through exercising, through basically sticking to the promises, that I make out to myself, that's like basically where good leadership is created. First, taking care of yourself. And basically one thing that is the main thing, it's leading by example. Because how can you expect your team to perform when you look at your business as a means to an end? Or how do you expect your team to be loyal to your business when you're just running a lifestyle business? And you have to lead your team and basically make the decisions. And, kind of like a very nuanced example of this is, I always used to ask my managers and my team members, guys, what do you think we should do here? Or guys, what do you think of this? And what I believe is leadership is a leader makes the decisions and of course asks the team for their suggestions and also their input, but leads with the decision first. And that was a big mistake that I made in the past, where I would like basically let my team do the leading indirectly, because deep down I knew I wasn't capable or confident enough to do that. But to like kind of keep this high level and valuable, the biggest things that I've learned about leadership is that it starts with you and not with anything or anyone else, right? And so that's why like I emphasize so much on health, keeping promises to yourself, and making sure that you know where you're going to and what your goal is. Because if you don't have that, then you don't know like where to lead the team to. It's kind of like just being in the middle of the ocean and not having like a clear destination and just like kind of floating everywhere, right? And so leadership, like to me, that is kind of like the definition of it. And I think like in this space, you hear a lot of like that term, right? Like leadership, and it can mean a lot of different things, but to me, that is what that means. And underneath that, like within a coaching company, right? Like kind of to go into the trenches here, I believe that accountability is the second most important thing, a part of leadership, which is done by the leader, but also by like the executives within the organization. Because, we're all familiar with like the terms of like closing and appointment setting and marketing, but so many people just hire someone on and then they're actually too lazy to check the inbox. While, a lot of my clients, they all do pretty much appointment setting, right? And so then you have a setter. And so many of my clients, and this is not direct towards anyone, but a lot of them, like they pretty much just let the setter go loose and just hope something happens and that their business is going to grow. Wow, it requires tracking of KPIs. It requires you to go in the inbox like 5 to 10 times a day, right? And making sure that everything is squeaky clean and going according to plan, because you'll find 8 out of 10 times that these 5 messages were not responded to. These 20 past calls were not followed up with. And the opportunity cost of that is huge. And that can only be tracked through accountability and going into the trenches here and there. And now you may be thinking, well, Bass, I don't have time to do that. Well, then make sure you put a manager in place, because otherwise your company is going to suffer the consequences of that. And funnily enough, too, your appointment setter will not make enough commissions, most likely, or enjoy the opportunity because of lack of leadership. And I guess what happens, your setter is out within the next 2 to 4 to 8 weeks, and you're scratching your head, oh shit, well, why did it happen, right? So yeah, leadership like leads on so many fronts in terms of like business success. And without my team, like I definitely wouldn't hit the numbers that we are and serve the students like in the sizes that we are. So yeah, man, I hope that's valuable. And that's like, one of the key things that I definitely took away like just from practice. Like I've not read books on leadership. I've not watched videos. It's just been like doing the thing. And that's like really what I see as, like a huge deal for people, especially running a coaching business, that they need to master, have trait-wise within their character to make sure they can lead the boat and steer the ship, which again, starts with you. You're not going to do that overnight. And with that, making sure the hierarchy is being like taken care of. And it all starts with you at the top.
Yeah. I mean, we're not at $1 million a month yet, but it's so funny what you said about that idea of leadership. Just like I did the same thing where I would look at I would even look like at a sales rep and I'd be like, what do you think? You know what I mean? And I realized it's so funny that you say that. Cause like, I remember, I made that mistake. I made that mistake of being like, what do you think? And I almost, what I was doing in that moment is I was neglecting and disrespecting the experience and knowledge that I have. And I was like leaning on them because I was almost like I was afraid to just make a strong decision, Yeah. And I don't necessarily know where that fear comes from because I've got a great view on the market and a great view on the model. So I don't even really know where that fear of that decision like stems from. Yeah. It could just be a fear of being wrong, or it's like, I think you need to develop this capacity of knowing that it's really just you suspended in the void. It's your job to make good decisions. And even though you have managers and executives in your company or whatever, it's still you. It's still just you. And being really comfortable in that zone, which is why I think, you have this advantage with having a woman like Danique in your life, and why I've gotten better at those sorts of decisions since Lily and I have gotten married. Because now I'm like, no matter what happens, I've got her. Yeah. Because, these are so many scary decisions that you have to make, but like, honestly, I think a part of why I was incapable of making them for the longest time was because I was afraid of, like, what if I make the wrong one? And if I make the wrong one, this will happen. And if that happens, then it was a lot of what ifs. Right. Now it's like my floor is so much higher now because in my personal life, I've built a solid base for myself, and I think I'm very security driven. And in being very security driven, I wasn't willing to make strong calls and hold my team accountable to them to the degree of firing on the basis of them not following my decision. If I would make a strong decision and somebody wouldn't follow through, I'd be like, oh, that's okay. Like ultimately you're good enough to stay on the team. And I would just make exceptions. And now I realize like that was ultimately a very, very damaging thing for my company. And you say you didn't read any books, dude. I'm a huge book reader. So I read Wooden on Leadership, and he said like, such a good book, dude. One of the key things that I took away from it that I think you've learned via experience, but I learned from reading this is like, when you relieve responsibility onto a team member on something that isn't theirs, you're being incredibly selfish in that moment. And you're being incredibly selfish because ultimately you're just running from the uncomfort of having that on your shoulders, right? And when you refuse to have hard conversations with team members as well, you're being selfish. I used to think that in order to lead a company, I had to make everybody like feel good and be bought in, and like good company culture meant everybody's excited and feels good about the work and whatever. I now realize that I was completely wrong. That good company culture is the leader has a very strong positive and a very strong negative. Like if you don't meet the bar, that's a problem. That's strike one. If you do meet the bar, there's intense reward. And he needs to stay in that state of intense positive and negative feedback. And I did no negative feedback, dude. I was scared of negative feedback because I am scared of negative feedback. So I don't like when somebody gives me negative feedback, so I was scared to pass it down. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's really cool hearing you learn these because it's like I learn by observation. This is my person. I just watch and I watch and I watch and I piece the pieces together and I see that. And it's just really inspiring to see that you learn, like, give some examples of, I don't know how willing you are to get about specifics of leadership mistakes and leadership successes that you've had that have led to where you are today, but that would be an amazing topic.
100%. I believe mistakes can only be made when you're not taking care of yourself, you're not keeping comes to yourself and you're cheating on yourself, like indirectly, you also cheat on your team because you can't show up to the best of your capability. And I think like leadership is not just in like a business, it's everywhere, you know, like also in your relationship, like you gotta provide, make the decisions, you know, provide security. You know, leadership is in war, you know, like look at like basically our history, like you've got warlords that lead their team basically into success and, you know, glory of battle. It's literally everywhere. And what I think we can take away from that is like the traits that they have, you know, which is so inspiring when you basically think about it. It's decisiveness, it's courage, it's trusting, because you said like the what ifs, right? Like in that case, man, like my perception on this is you gotta like be able to trust yourself, even if the problem arises, to figure it out. And that's like why I'm not afraid of like negative feedback or for things to go wrong, because I'm like, well, that happens. I trust myself and I'm going to figure it out. Even if it's the worst thing, you know, like I don't care what it is, because, you know, me doubting myself versus this thing happening, the worst thing in that scenario is me doubting myself, because it's going to reflect into more things in my life, right? Not just my business, but even my personal life. So I prefer to be ready for whatever comes rather than having that doubt internally. And I think like leadership really just comes from number one, like experience. And second, also just looking at like other successful leaders in different, you know, like just facets of life, whether that's war, whether that's relationships, like it is really everywhere when you think about it. When someone's on the stage like Tony Robbins, like just look at the traits that a guy carries. It's courage, confidence, positivity, no judgment. It's leading. And I think it's just in the nuances too, ultimately, that if you master with time, you become a better leader, but it only happens by actually doing the thing. And I don't consider myself like the number one or the best leader. Like I've just honestly just started because I recently just started taking care of myself. But man, I think it goes so fast because we internally actually know what we need to do to be a good leader. And like I've known that for years, but I've only acted on it for a few months. And I think it's like basically within everyone, because we all look up to people too in the industry. And for me, I believe that that's because we look up to certain traits that they have, which always one of those traits that comes back is leadership, right? Yep. So with that being said, I think that that's what leads a company to success. I think that's why your managers need to have, you know, basically also those traits. And that's why it is very controversial. I love people like Andrew Tate, right? Like masculinity and really going into the purest form of who you are, I believe too breeds incredible confidence that cannot be commented with, because it's just in our nature as a man to have that, right? And so when you really just go in that and you do the basic things, like naturally you can become a good leader, but also with experience. So yeah, it's a very fascinating topic, and as you can see, like it reflects in all facets of life. Like, and it's funny because even in like my relationship, if I would think of like, you know, what's funny, because before I post like an IG story or an IG feed content that like I'm unsure about, usually I'd ask the Nick like, hey babe, what do you think about this? Right? Like, I'm so self-conscious. I'm like, I'm just going to post it.
Yeah. It's almost like consolidate. Yeah, dude. It's like if you can consolidate all of these character traits you're talking about, it just sounds like a sense of self-resolve, like a deep sense of self-resolve of like, and what you said there was very interesting and it's so true. And I've experienced this even at the scale that I'm at, of like self-doubt is ultimately more harmful than the business than making the wrong decision. Yeah. And it reminds me of that Jim Rohn quote, or not verbatim, it's a quote, but he's got this concept of like when you reach an intersection and you can't decide where to go, just peel down one way. You'll find out if it was the wrong way. Just turn around if it was. It's not a big deal. But sitting idle is actually more painful in the short and the long term than just picking and just deciding. And so this is one of the traits that I see of the successful people, and the people that, you know, succeed in your programs and my programs, the people generally in any industry that succeed. They have the ability to make quick decisions. Right or wrong, they're willing to commit all the way to that decision, see it all the way through, and then at the very end of it, if they realize they made the wrong decision, cool, we'll retract, we'll go the other way. But odds are, it's what I've found is it's not the decision itself, it's the posture in which you make the decision with, and your willingness to make that decision work for you. There's no binary right or wrong, right? And that's, I think, something I've picked up along my way, and I think something that you're in your own words saying yourself. It's like, no right or wrong, just make a strong decision and commit. And I think so many people are afraid of doing that. And it's very inspiring, dude, because I think I thought that like the $1 million a month activities were like just tons of marketing, tons of sales. It's like, and you start to consolidate these traits, and it's like, it's leadership, it's decision making, decisiveness, quick on your feet, willing to commit all the way to the things that are best for the business, willing to reward on good behavior, punish on bad behavior, staying unobjective and unbiased, completely neutral, having a clear vision, downloading it to your team often, and having eyes on the whole business. And if you could do those things, then, and I think that's what you've demonstrated and done very, very well.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, this is phenomenal.
It's very true. And, like good leadership, then once you have like at least a good basis by just simply taking care of yourself and keeping promises to yourself, now you're able to delegate because you actually entrust the own decisions you're making and what you're putting your team members on. Because when you have the confidence, you translate that confidence into them to then basically do that thing. So whether that's closing calls or appointments or email marketing, like whatever it is, right? Like it's not about the what, it's about like how you execute upon the what. And we all have access to like active campaign, to the IGDMs, to the bio, but the results are different. And the reason why is because we put people on it with the right workflow. We instill the right confidence in them. We lead them properly. And it's like, just imagine having like 10 Treys in your business, like, just working and finding things that they can basically generate revenue from for their companies. They're going to find it, right? Because those are capable people. And now people on your team, they usually have the capability, but not the right leadership. And that's the beautiful thing about like a team hierarchy, right? Like that's where you got to come in and make sure that they're doing the right thing. So it always comes down back onto you. And I think that that's like such a big struggle for people because number one, like it's very hard to create awareness around this, number one. And second, that you even need this at the stage of like scaling. And I believe like everyone needs leadership when you're building a team because it's going to become more than you. And it's funny, right? Because then like too in the industry, you'll hear, like no one can close like me or no one can set like me. It's like, no, you're just not a good leader. And that's just the bitter truth. And 100%. That's not like, if people perceive that negative, they have like got a long way to go to like get to the point that they want to be at, man, because scaling is like also hearing the nasty thing from your mentor, which I had a hard time giving to people too. It's like, no, you just gotta like stop being lazy or stop being a victim. By the way, as I'm saying is like I'm not patronizing you or being negative. I just see you're being lazy because you're working 2 hours a day, but you expect this result. Does that make sense? And in this like society we live in today too, like as you know, like it's so easy to get offended. And I think that too is something that I have to rewire my own brain. Because when my mentor would tell me that, I'd be like, wow, this guy's kind of a dick. There's no one to defend. But I think like you also get to toughen up. Like as an entrepreneur and as a person, that's like why I love just going into that masculine role and just being able to like take that objectively and ask yourself, wow, that's really interesting. What can I like take away from this? And like when we say these things, we're very self-aware, but it's like in the moment you got to be able to do that, right? When it's actually happening. But yeah, man, I think like hitting $1 million a month is fantastic, especially in the coaching space. But at the same time, as I mentioned, like, about 20 minutes ago, there's just so much more opportunity out there. And I think like with, just you taking good care of yourself, because we're all capable of this and just making sure you have like, that instilled confidence that can only come from like keeping promises to yourself, you're going to crush it. And I love that the universe works that way, because you can't cheat yourself, because if you cheat on yourself, you directly cheat on your team. Because if you have like a bad habit and you execute upon a bad habit, you feel guilty. Well, guess what happens like now in your leadership? Like there's doubt because you have guilt. And when you have guilt, you feel terrible, right? And that takes days to pass. And that's like why I'm always also incentivized to like just go to bed on time, wake up on time, eat my meals, exercise.
Dude, let's dive deeper into this. You said this like 6 times and we haven't peeled it open. My perception of taking care of myself is soul, body, relationships, and then out from there, right? So like my time in the Word, my time in Scripture, knowing God, that's like first priority number 1 in my life is like my walk with God. Immediately following is my relationship with my wife, like making sure that she knows she's loved, making sure that I take care of her every morning, every evening, that she has my full presence when I'm not working. Out from there is my body, taking care of my health, my mind, like vision board, meditation, all this, like as well as hitting the gym and making sure my blood's flowing. And then when I have those pillars in place, I mean, honestly, I could not have gotten to $1 million a year if I didn't first work on those and sustain those. I probably could have done it for like 3 months, had like a $80,000 to $100,000 a month run rate. But the way that I'm trying to build my life, there's just no way I could have sustained that. So for self-care, for me, that's the layers. It's soul, relationship, body, mind, and then the work. And so I'm curious what you said self-care. So, and when you say self-care, you're saying sleep and gym. Are there any other elements to taking care of yourself, or is that the primary thing that you're looking at right now? It's just your energy levels and your literal physical ability to put output?
Yeah, I guess when we just talk about like me, myself, for leadership, it's really just those fundamental things. Like, it's the longest thing that I always procrastinated on. If you look at 2020, 2021, right? Like, I just ate one kebab a day. I didn't work out. I went to bed way too late. So that identity became something that I wanted to become the opposite of. So every time I do those things, I'm proud of myself, and that brightness basically reinstills into confidence too, in a healthy way. But of course, like outside of that, there's so many more important things, which is like making sure I'm giving back to my family. I'm present for Danique. I'm spending my time with her, right, like on a day-to-day basis, and also just making sure that, like my life is very simple, man. Like other than that, I don't really care about a lot of things. Like I also care then on the business side, like about my team. I care that we're progressing. I think that is such a fundamental, like, and simple metric to like track happiness or unhappiness with, because I believe like we can all resonate with like if you're not growing, then you're going to be very unhappy, because progress is in the nature of like just entrepreneurs. But if they make it, they're going to be happy. And like I've seen that too with clients. Like if they're not making progress directly too, they're not happy. If they are making progress, they are happy. And so then we can also talk about goal attachment here, but I think like that's a topic on its own, because I think if you just look at the purest form of, I guess, just because I talk a lot about men here, but I'm sure we're gonna have females like watch the podcast too, but just know I can talk about both. Like it's just like those purest traits that if you can master, like progress, the basics I keep mentioning like 10 times on this podcast, you can do a lot. And that alone is not going to make you money, but that energy you get back and the confidence you receive back to then go about your work day, that's what's going to be making you the money and the impact you're going to have. So for me, that's been like the biggest thing that I've like that has made a difference for me, like in my personal life as well as like just my entrepreneurial venture, I would say.
So self-care for you is, and taking care of yourself is like your physical body, your energy, making sure you're sleeping well, eating well, getting sun, just the basics that run your biology.
So boring, dude. So boring.
It is super boring. And then it's like drinking water.
As I told you too before we started this podcast, like the sun, man. Like if I get the sun in my face, I don't think I can get more basic on this podcast.
Bro. Dude.
If I get the sun in my face, I'm complete.
Baastian, the question everybody's wondering, do you sun your balls?
No, not yet. Not yet.
It's so funny. No, dude, the sun's a superpower, man. I've told people that for so, like, I was telling you right before the podcast went off, like, even if it's like 20 degrees below freezing, man, if it's sunny out, I'll get a run in, or I'll get a walk in.
Good.
I'll get that sun on my skin. Because, dude, it is such a source of energy. We are, in this life, we are a biological being. And just like plants need the sun, you need water, and it's just wild. Like people forget these fundamentals. Like you need certain nutrients, the sun, water, sleep, and it's like you feel so much better, dude. And and one of the best things I ever did was like dude, I mean this is like 7 years ago, but I cut out soda. Absolutely no soda. Only exception is I'll probably drink soda maybe once a year, twice a year. Like I traditionally have a root beer on Christmas. I have a root beer on Christmas, and then I have like maybe some like sodas like during just the holiday season, like one. It's like, because I have to say that for accountability. I don't do no soda, but because I literally, my family will call me out. They'll be like, "Oh, you had some on Christmas." Like, yeah, it's Christmas though. It's different. It's like soda's my cheat, whereas for other people, like alcohol is their cheat. You know what I mean? So you just want to have a higher bar. And those things pay off so good, dude. So yeah, I completely agree, man. And it's just really good, like as your friend too, to see you taking care of yourself, because like that's there for a while I was sort of concerned. I'm like, I know that you can't keep this pace, dude. Like, because I want the best for everybody that's in my sphere and in my circle, and like you're one of those individuals, and like I knew that you couldn't do kebabs and caffeine for another year, dude. There's just no way. No, so I'm really happy to see that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, man. Yeah. It's definitely been a big change, and like for me too, like a big motivation was a conversation I had with Danique when we were here in Portugal. Like this conversation took place about 4 or 5 months ago, and she was just like, "Bass, I'm genuinely concerned about our future, and I'm not sure if it is a wise thing for me to be together with you if this is how you're going to be pursuing your health. Not because like I doubt our relationship, but because I fear for your life with like how you're living. And, you know, I want to have a future with you. So I would really love for you to like start taking care of yourself. And by the way, context, like she didn't try to leave. It's just like genuine concern about like my health. Because I mean, imagine like you're with someone in a relationship and they could die any day. But you want to have kids in the future and you already have a vision. Like that just doesn't align. So you need to have a conversation, right? So we had a conversation. And that too, like, has been a huge pillar, healthy pillar for me to like also use that as motivation to do it for them, not just for me, because again, that obsessive personality is just very simple to get lost in, right? It's just like doing one thing and here's some caffeine, you're 20, you still have energy. But man, probably when I would get into my 30s, if I were to have that routine, holy fuck, like I wouldn't want to look at like my lungs, my stomach and all that shit. Bro. Dude, it would be a mess. And, you know, as of today, like, Danique just cooks for me 2 meals a day. It's just broccoli with, like, meat and, you know, at night also.
Super clean. Yeah, my wife does the same thing. She'll just slide over. I'll be working, and she'll just slide over a plate of, like, really healthy, like, such a cheat code, man, to get a woman that, like, has the same vision of the future and, like, is willing to pick up the pieces. And, dude, it's there's some real power in the woman that you pick. You know what I mean? There's some intense power. And this is where, like you said, you love Andrew Tate, and I do too. The place where I draw the line with Tate, though, is like, do not let a woman into your life, period, even casually, that doesn't align with your vision of 10, 20, 30 years out into the future. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only place where I draw the line is like, he kind of promotes that lifestyle. I'm like, I don't get that, dude. It makes no sense to me. Don't sleep around. Don't have sex with a girl who's not like right there, ready to commit all the way with you, all the way into your vision. And so because I had that standard in my life and now I'm married and we weren't perfect at it, but I did my absolute best to not be sexually active until we were married even. Because I knew that I want to be all the way in with somebody. And now it's like, dude, I have the perfect support vehicle. Like I do not have to think about the details in my life. And honestly, I think what quote held me back, and when I say held me back, I'm like, I think I could probably be at a higher level in business right now, but I refused to sacrifice building that pillar into my life in order to like chase new heights, right? And so, but now I'm so happy I did it. Happy I did it, because it's like, it's the same thing. She just slides over like chicken, broccoli, rice, seasoned well, it's delicious, and it's like 800 calories, like 40 grams of protein, just slam it and get back to work. Dude, it's perfect, man. And not just the food, but it's the knowing that I have somebody in my corner who like is desperate to see me succeed in the same way that I want to succeed and loves watching the progress, sees the details, sees the sacrifices I'm making, and supports me in that way. And I now understand it. And I'm only 3 months into being married, but now I understand what men mean when they say like, you know, every strong man behind him has an equally as strong woman who might not get as much credit. And like, I have to like very consciously give her a ton of credit because, dude, like, there's no way. I'm only 3 months in, but I can see 10, 20, 30 years from now, like, there's no way I can do the things that I'm wanting to do if it weren't for that support system. There's just no way. And so I love that it was a conversation with Danique that caused you to make that change. It's very apparent to me how much love you have for her and how much she's bought into the mission. But I think, who knows how long she was thinking about talking to you for. She was like, should I confront him? Should I not? How do I do this? And then she did, and it worked out for her, which just speaks a lot towards your character and her buy-in to you.
100%, man. And it's very interesting you say that because, you know, with the dynamic we have, number one, like, it's just a very healthy foundation for not just our personal life, but also our business. Mm-hmm. And I agree with what you're saying in terms of like the meals too, man. Like it's, you know, it's such a simple thing because you could like just get like, I don't know, like a meal company to deliver it like on your doorstep. But just like the gesture of it, you know, like from that leading your relationship is huge alone. And no, I wanted to mention something else, but it slipped my tongue, so I don't know what it is. But it was also about, I was going to say, like, dude, we're very blessed to have like the women we have in our life. Yeah. Because it's very rare to find them like just in, you know, because I know you had a partner previous to Lily, but dude, like for me, like just finding Danique as the first partner, and for you now too being married, That's very rare to like have the right lady by your side to like that. That too alone is a rarity because we talk about like having them, which is fantastic, and I'm very grateful, as I'm sure you are too. But like, if you look at the culture we live in today too, man, like it's so screwed up with like just the one night stands and the clubs and have fun till you're 30, right? And then
screwed up, dude.
It's funny because then like you reach those comments when you see those reels, right? And you see like those men saying, "Where have all the good men gone?"
Yeah.
It's like they're all getting married in their 20s. Like we're
we're settling down early to have kids and have a family and raise children the right way and lead and actually be leaders of our homes. Like you're talking about leadership earlier in this podcast. Like leadership is a masculine prerogative. You have to have I have a vision for my home and my wife, and like and this isn't putting her down. This is just what leaders do. Like when I see that she's doing something that is out of line of that vision, I sit her down and I confront her and I say, "Babe, I love you, but we cannot do this because here's the vision." And I speak that vision. 20 years from now, I want to be here. And if we keep doing this, that might not happen. And in the same way Danique sat you down, I'm sure you've had vice versa the same conversation. We're like, "Hey, Danique, I need this from you." Right? And people just don't understand how, like, we're so lost in I do not understand.
It's so because if you were to put the last 20 seconds of this podcast right now, what you just said, on Instagram, you'd get people commenting like, "No, that's toxic." Like, you know,
dude. Oh my god. And they'd be like, "Oh, it's toxic. You're toxic masculinity," or they will say like, "Bro, they'll literally. It's great, dude." I'm gonna be honest, and I'm not gonna drop any names. Like, part of why I ended a relationship that very well could have been a marriage, honestly, and this is honestly God, is because she saw my desire to be a masculine man as toxic, and we very well could be married today. We very, very well, because she's a beautiful young girl. She was pleasant to be around in all forms, except she believed that in order to be a better man, I had to be more like a woman, basically. Yeah. And I got that read from her, and I got that sense from her, and it was just like, and it was like the further I went, the more she resented. I was like, can't have this. This was like a long time ago. It was like 6-7 years ago. But you know, that was my first introduction to this stuff, and then I start seeing it everywhere, and I'm very, very, very lucky to have a very strong father figure in my life that I can lean on. My dad, you know, he's been a business owner my whole life. He's been incredible to my mom and incredible to me as his son and my brothers and sister. And so he's really given me that example of what it looks like to lead a home and lead a business. But not a lot of men have that. And so I'm not quite as susceptible to characters like Tate's philosophies. I like some of the things he says. I don't like his underlying philosophy that somehow you're more of a man by having many, many, many partners. Any man can have many. You level yourself up. You high status, really easy. The hard thing is digging deep and saying, no matter what happens, I'm here with this one person for the rest of my life. And that to me, it's just more manly. There's more masculinity in that. There's more manhood in that. And you ultimately, to me, you know yourself better through that. You know God better. You know who your limitations and the character traits that you need to work on. When you pass along one partner at a time like this, there's no reflection. Women act as this incredible mirror for men, and you never get that. So that's where I draw the line with characters like that, is like, you don't understand the God-given blessing that women are. Like, my wife and I both got tattoos at the same time. So I've got this tattoo. It's in Hebrew. And the tattoo that she got, which is right before we got married, it's the Hebrew word that the Bible uses for when God enters into the scene in any scenario, as well as when women enters the scene when he makes Eve for Adam. And the word in English translates to something like lifesaver. It's etzer, E-Z-E-R. And it literally physically means that God made woman as a life-changing and life-saving agent for men. So like without women and without that committed all-in relationship with a singular woman, you may never know yourself fully as a man. You may never. And so for me, it's a very challenging philosophy for some men to receive, and especially like men who succeed highly in business, because it's very easy. Like, I'm not an ugly guy. I've got money to my name. Like, it's not hard. Right? And so you have to like understand why. Like, I was mentoring this person on marriage. He's very successful, multiple 7-figure business owner. And he's like, "Trey, I just admire how you've set up your life. Like, can we do some coaching on that?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" And I told him, you have to fall in love with being a married man as much as you fall in love with the woman you're marrying. Like, you have to love the concept of being married and see why you want it. And dude, I don't know, man. Like, I could rant on that for hours, bro. But I guarantee there's gonna be people in the comments like, if this is a short, which I'm sure it will be, because my editing team is awesome. they're gonna be in the comments like, Trey doesn't get it, he doesn't understand, he'll never have good sex. Like, bro, you're still missing it, dude. You have no idea.
Yeah, like take into account that.
Yeah.
Like, if you remember, I'm sure you do. Like with Anik too. Like we had, like I remember you did a call with her to lean more into her feminine because she too started as an entrepreneur, and we were both trying to be masculine in our relationship. And man,
It wasn't working.
Yeah, exactly. That's the bitter truth. And I mean, like that's the fact that I hate so much about just this culture because what we're talking about, man. Like I didn't even have awareness until like Tate came by. You know what I mean? That's why like. I value his appearance. I'm not saying like I agree with everything he's saying, like just his appearance to what should be like a normality in our society and culture. You know, like having those traditional values. And so many people don't agree with that, of course, because you have like those rainbow flag communities and, you know, no racism or discrimination intended. But I think like just like it messes with our mind indirectly so much. Like I've never affiliated myself with that, but now when that comes to your awareness and you put the dots together, you're like, holy shit, this is so wrong. You know, when you, especially with children, you know, like when you're teaching this at schools and you're like indoctrinating innocent children who like are not even capable yet of making their own decisions. Like even myself, dude, until like I was 22, 21, like I wasn't capable of making my own decisions. Yeah. It's just very sad.
8-year-old kids being taught, you know, like, yeah, dude, it is screwed. It's completely screwed. Dude, you should read the book. Like, I know you and Danica are very, like, you want to start a family, want to raise, like, dude, there's a book that you should definitely, I know the way you are, like, I think you almost take some, like, cool sense of, like, and I admire this, you're, like, pride and, like, I'm just going to figure it out. But a really good book, dude, is a book called Weapons of Mass Instruction. And it actually digs into the original founding members of the Board of Education and what their intent was when they were designing it. And when you dig and dig and dig and you find the truth is it was ultimately essentially a mind control agent. It was something designed to get people to believe what the state wanted them to believe. Yeah. So if I have a form of privilege, dude, it was being raised in a homeschooled home where my parents passed down their values directly to me. Yeah. So I was never graded. Right, I never went to public school. I've been to a public school building 5 times, and 3 of them were to speak. The other 2 were to use, like, the bathroom. So, like, I've never been in a public school building much at all, right? And that's a huge blessing because parents, I think, need to learn that it is their job to raise their children, and even if they are, quote, public schooled, they're still homeschooled because they will still download your philosophy and worldview without you even realizing it. And this is what it means to be a leader, like you said earlier. You need to lead, and I'm like, I don't have kids yet. From a humble position, I don't have kids yet. I'm newly married, so I'm sure there's a lot of hard lessons that are coming my way about actually doing these things and how hard it is. I do know, though, that philosophy will drive my home when it comes time for me to have a home. My children will never step foot in a public school. I don't want them to ever think at all about their gender identity and what, like, you are who you are, lean into it heavy and make the most of it and play the cards you've got. God has blessed you with the gender, the skin color, the whatever you have. Lean hard. You can be whoever you want to be, accept the basics first, go make something of yourself. And I don't know, dude, it's wild to me that it's even a debate whether that's okay or not.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, and that's the thing. However, you know, like when people create communities, those communities have like strong beliefs, and you know, when children, for example, get like, you know, grown into communities like that, it's, you know, just kind of like us. Imagine if we were to grow up in this day and age and time, we would find that normal, like the rainbow stuff, and I mean, like, if you're into rainbows and you're watching this podcast, like, just know there's no racism or discrimination intended.
Yeah, none at all.
Anyone deserves that. But I do believe that, you know, people should be able to make, or at least just get into the basics first and make a powerful human being, so being the purest form of yourself. And then probably when you're conscious of, like, you know, what is actually going on with masculinity, femininity, and, you know, like also the rainbow stuff, have to make their own decisions. But until then, like, I believe that people, like children, should be left out of the equation.
100%, dude.
When you think like about even a wider skill, you know, like just social media, man, like how it just weakens men. If you scroll on your explore page, you see like half nude women, like all the time. You know, and I think that's not intentional, not even joking. And I think that's what like also leads people to creating that, you know, pee addiction. And when people have that, like they become weak. And when you do like a mass skill with like those big tech platforms, what do you have? Like you've got a weak society. And that's why, like, again, I re-mentioned Tate again. That's where I love his appearance just in just the industry and just making jokes about it. Like, dude,
Yeah.
you're controlling your own hand. You're not a victim. Like, stop being a little bee. You know?
Yeah, yeah, dude.
Go
No, I
just-
love it, man. And like, it reminds me of that idea that like men with no purpose seek pleasure. You know, if you haven't designed your purpose in your life, and also if you haven't designed and started pursuing that purpose and seeing the fruits of a couple months of sacrifice or a year or two of sacrifice, and you see that, oh wow, I actually could become that person, then you will. And I used to have a porn issue, man. Now I'm a married man. I haven't had an issue with it in years because I have a mission in my life, and I have a woman who, like, not to be TMI, but like fully fulfills those needs. So I've got the need met, and then I've got the mission as well. And I can speak to the men that are having that trouble, like, dude, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but you have to design a mission for your life. And I know that you as well. I mean, I don't know how comfortable you are, but you've been open before, so I'm sure you're okay with being open about it. Like you had an issue with it at one point too. And there's something about the video game plus like just the internet overconsumption and dopamine culture that just immediately leads to the consumption of I'll just say pornography. Like I imagine I'll be flagged or anything, but it leads to that consumption. And dude, and then for some reason, like the same people that are pushing, like you said, like, and again, there's no judgment. Like when you're an adult, you can make your own decision. And I'm like best of friends with some people who do believe these ideologies, and we agree to disagree, and that's fine. But when you are an adult, sure, you have your own prerogative, but we're telling children that this stuff is okay. You know what I mean? And like, that's again where I have the issue is like, oh yeah, pornography is just a natural expression of sex, which I think, in my view, derives from the belief and view that humans are just another animal. And this is where I get into my faith again. We're not another animal. We're spiritually designed in the eyes of God. We're set apart. And in that way, our sex instinct needs to be channeled properly. It's not something we just express because it creates dysfunction at a very core level for us as human beings if we're not channeling it properly. And, you know, I get called legalistic, I get called control freak, whatever, but I'm a better man because of it, and I know that to be completely true.
I agree with you, man. And I think like 80% of the thing, like you could easily say that this is just all like an argument between communities, and that is quite innocent, right? Because that's just the nature of like having conversations. But I believe man, like that so many of these things that are happening in the world, like those communities, are just done intentionally. You know, like it's just, and it talks about like the Matrix. I believe like so many of those things are done intentionally, and it's actually scary when you think about like the higher power that's out there and actually what that looks like on the back end. Because when governments aren't actually in control, but it's the people above those who actually are, you're like, well, holy shit, the world I thought I was living in is complete lie, you know. Perfect example is like COVID. Like so many things just don't make sense. That, and you know, you probably have to filter a word out like of this podcast, but
you know, if it's on Spotify, I don't have to. If it's on YouTube, maybe.
Yeah. But you know, like it's just the older you get, and the more you think for yourself, and you're in the best form of yourself, the more you realize you can see so many of these things that are being said to be true are actually not true. And so you have to do your own research, and boom, leadership again. Like you wouldn't be able to do that without thinking for yourself, through being a leader for yourself by taking care of yourself. And I believe that that's even more fundamental than being financially sound, because you can have all the money in the world, but I respect a man who's got their character and values in the right place a lot more than some money, right?
Yep.
And that's the shift I made too. Like I was like, well, I'm making $500K a month, right? Like it's nice, people respect me, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, dude, you lack character. You lack what you could have. Like work on that. That is more important. Like when you're in a conversation with your dad, you should be able to have like, you know, good energy to be able to like have a good conversation. And it was a lot of fun actually when I was back there for Christmas, you know, because I was talking to my dad and I was asking him about like, oh, Dad, like now I realize how much love and care you had for me. I mean, I always did on a level, of course, but you know, like the older I get, the more I realize like you always protected me and like see me as the number one thing, and you do anything for me. And that's like an emotion you can describe. Like for example, that's something that you maybe have for your puppy who's now a pretty big boy, right? Like birthday.
Yeah, not compared to a kid. I have more love for my imaginary people.
Imagine the love a dad would have for his kid. Like imagine just that feeling, or a mom for his son or daughter, you know. I think that feeling is something that is indescribable. And you know, for example, like I don't know if I'm sure you had this like in the past when you were like, you know, between the ages of 20 to 18, like you would go out with your friends, right? And my dad would always text me like, Baz, when are you coming home? And I'm like, Dad, like stop texting me. Like, I'm just trying to go out and have some fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when you look at the other side, my dad just wants to make sure I'm actually okay, nothing's happening to me. And that's like, the rules, of course, you have at home are like the least on the, like, spot at that list, because he just wants to make sure you're good. Like, you're concerned when the like son or daughter you have is out there, you don't know what you're doing, right? Because imagine, like, again, dude, like you have a son or a daughter, and maybe they're doing drugs, or maybe like they're hanging with the wrong people, or maybe like just that feeling alone of just giving it some thought. And I'm not even a father yet, so just imagine like when I actually become one.
Yeah,
I'll probably be a very strict father with the right intentions. I think that is to something that like supported me a lot, like in going into this new identity of like an 8-figure entrepreneur, being a better leader, like being a father figure. It's also leadership. You lead your son, you lead your wife, right? To like security, providing, and making sure like that there is a vision for like the family. So yeah, man, very interesting topic. But funnily enough, too, you can see like everything derives from the traditional values we have. Like it's masculinity, it's femininity, right? I don't know how you pronounce it. Those two things that, are the foundation of everything at the end of the day, man. So think about it that way. Life is actually quite simple.
It is, man. It is. There's way less questions. There's a lot more clarity. You can see through the fog and derive answers from the other side of the fog, and realize, oh wow, it's the only reason it's foggy is because you've got like humankind is so confused because they have all these selfish pleasures that they want to take part in, and they're trying to create ideologies that allow them to have those selfish pleasures so that they don't feel guilty. But once you get rid of that fog, it's like, oh wow, it's all very clear. Yeah, man, it's very, very clear. Dude, so let's talk a bit about the transition you're wanting to make. I think this could be a good transition point in the podcast to maybe talk about you talk about using these leadership principles you've learning how to run a company and all these things, and moving into a new industry. Tell me more about that path and what that's going to look like for you, and what you suppose is going to happen over the next few years.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, like I'm seeing a huge market shift happen just in the coaching space, which is like a lot of people don't want coaching programs anymore. People want done for you, or a combination of done for you and done with you. I think the era of coaching programs will not black and white come to an end, but it will be like a lot less hot. People just want actually the work done for them, or get like help in the trenches from people that are capable of doing so. So that's like one reason I'm moving out of like, just the military consulting space. The vision that I have is personally just on a business and logistical level to build appointmentsetter.com to a multi-8-figure, even 9-figure company through, number one, having a huge university where we help people become an appointment setter at a mass scale. Second, it's having like a B2B division as well that I'm also going to have a partner in, which is my setter manager. And then third, after those two divisions are streamlined, basically opening up like a marketplace, which I have to see like how to monetize, but doing it like at a mass scale with business owners and our students that are getting certified, and seeing like what that's going to be looking like. But you can see that's not going to be Baastian on one-on-one calls. This is going to be like an organization with a lot of people and a lot of moving pieces. So that's my vision. Here, and I can see too, like in the B2C space, like just helping beginners find fibers. Those people want help so much more than coaches, and I think it also just has to do with the market size, of course. But man, like with military consulting, we're booking 4 or 5 calls a day average, and with appointmentsetter.com, like we've booked 300 calls per day since Monday. Like,
and are those like sales calls or like triage calls? I see you drop that number. I'm like, bro, there's how the.
Those are triage calls. So those are 15-minute calls where we quickly build rapport, see if they're a good fit, and then financially pre-qualify them at the end to make board certification.
Yeah, I think that's what that must have been, because I'm like, there's no way you have like 30 people on sales right now. Like
40 sales calls per day being conducted right now. So if you do the math, that's like 40 times 7 is 280 a week, about 1,000 a month. And awesome, that number is just going to be continuing to grow. And so that's my vision, just business-wise and logistically, kind of what that's going to look like. The big goal is to, of course, build a real personal brand, because, like having an appointment setter and posting call to action content all the time, like that's, in my opinion, not a brand. A brand is something like Tate or Iman, and just being like top of mind and spreading a powerful message. So for me, I yet have to exactly determine what that is going to be. But I'm very confident that it's going to be along the lines of like basically something we talked about here today in this podcast, like leadership, masculinity, probably masculinity, and then also just financial freedom. So kind of like a combination of Tate and Iman. But
That's good, dude.
what is that unique message going to be for me? What's going to separate me? Take that into the market, because I've also made like $100,000 investment, as you may or may not know, to basically
YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, so basically getting like an internal content team that's gonna like distribute my content on just TikTok, and having like tons of people making reels of me, and just basically mastering that. So that's gonna be a big project after the shutdown of my B2B company. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes down to like just the business logistics division that I have in 2023. And so as you can see, like it doesn't really become about the money; it's more about like just the impact and time freedom. And also the vision. And I think like at the beginning, guys, like for most people watching this, like you should focus first on like getting yourself secure, mastering like a couple of things that you want to get good at, and then moving into like vision, leadership, and all that. Like I think some people want to do it way too prematurely. Like people with zero clients, $0 in their bank account shouldn't pursue a big personal brand and message. Like that is being naive, to be honest with you, because you don't have any money to get attention, and you're never going to get the attention you want to build a real personal brand just organically. Right? Some people will that are really good on camera, but that's like the top 0.001%. Right? So you probably should just first solidify yourself financially secure, learn the basic business skills, and then whatever you build, use that as a stepping stone, like I'm doing, into the next thing. Right? Like everything I've done has been a stepping stone. So that's like kind of also advice I'd love to give to everyone, because you have to keep it simple. You have to be realistic. Being realistic doesn't mean like your goals are going to be shitty and demotivating. It just means that if you're going to be naive and focus on something that is not achievable, well, it's better to just be realistic and actually achieve things instead of like wasting years and having nothing to show for it, right? And a really simple way you can do that is just getting a mentor, and get a mentor with a good track record that can basically just say, well, this goal is like, just a bad goal. Here's why. Or this is a good goal, man. We should do this. Let's make a plan, right? So yeah, that's kind of like just my plan, along with just some advice I'd love to give to primarily beginners, because like business owners will already have like those reference points in place of like, hey, I get what he means. Yeah, that's what's ahead for me in 2023. But of course, like shutting down this company that has just come out of like 2 back-to-back record months is a project on its own too. But I know that like somewhere mid Q1, we're going to be pumping a lot of like, just organic content on the platform. So that's awesome.
That's killer, dude. That's super killer. Well, man, it's so funny that you said what you said about like your advice to beginners about, like basically in some sense you said like become notable and then financially secure yourself and then maybe start focusing on brand at that point. But even then, like in a lot of senses, you really haven't focused on like mass brand and mass impact. You've just been very much like close the deal, get them great results, repeat the process over and over and over again. And whatever traffic channel it takes to get that meeting, you'll tap into it. And I've seen that that's your personality type. And I had the opposite start where I started off being a content machine. And so, and it's very interesting, dude. I've noticed this transition point in my career where I, like 2019, 2020, I got to like 1 million a year because I was doing content, great on camera, great at talking. People always ask like, you seem very fluid when you're talking and you can display your ideas well and everything. I was like, dude, it's because I put 10,000 hours into making content. So I'm very familiar with that. But I almost had to head the other direction, leading a company, actually getting incredible results for clients, putting a great product, and like I had to slow down my brand in order to make the brand go faster in the next season. And I think I'll still spend a lot of 2023 in that direct response, just sell the client, get great results sort of arena. And, our goal is 500,000 a month this year. And I know we're well on pace. We're ahead of pace for it. So by Q2, we should be there. But it's because I went the other direction. You know what I mean? So now I know how to do content if I have to, but it's almost like I've already got plenty of content. My editing team will disperse and do what they got to do with it, whatever. My job now is leading my team. That is my sole number one job, is what we've talked about on this podcast, which is clear vision, clear accountability, hold my team to those standards, make clean cut decisions quickly and commit to those decisions. And if I have that posture, we're going to hit 500 a month this year. We're ahead of pace for 250 this month. I think we've done like, what's it, the 7th, and we've done 38 cash. So we're on it. You know what I mean? So yeah, bro, it's a good feeling.
And I mean, it's no coincidence. You're getting like a lot more direct response from what I can see, man. Like, look, when you look at my Instagram, it's just the same thing over and over again. And you think like, wow, this guy is probably a brokey and he scam. But if you look at the back end, like we're doing 8 figures a year and we're booking 300 meetings a day. So it's like, what do you want to optimize for? Do you want to like care about what people think of you and like your likes, or do you just want to actually be a business owner, right? And you can be both, don't get me wrong, but you have to master like both things. It's like leadership and personal branding are two huge things. Like just under leadership falls like you, first of all, understanding all the basic business skill sets, so marketing, sales, team building, onboarding, operations, right? Then under personal branding, it's being good in content, having a content. Because when you think of like the Trey 5 top dogs in the space, like I immediately think of Hormozy, I think of Sam Ovens, I think of Tate. But if we like take a look at the truth of why they're a big brand, it's because they've spent millions on good content teams and basically making sure they're top of mind. If you look at Sam Ovens, the guy was spending $30K per day on ads. Like he wasn't just, he was good at content, but he wasn't like, super special that he went viral organically. The guy spent so much money. So that's why, like I'm saying, just solidify your business first, crush that, stack a bunch of capital. And then the stepping stone after that can be like, a personal brand. So that's the truth that I'm seeing. And, because if you look at Hormozy's past too, like he's just done 6 years of gym launch or whatever, and then went personal brand. If you look at Sam Ovens, he first had Snap Insect and, did some things like for a few years, and then basically accumulated all that money, went huge with consulting.com. And then you got like the top 0.1% people like Iman that have always like done it organically, but then also compounded with a big organic content team where like the Reels is doing. And then you've got like other people too, but you can see like there's a pattern, With Andrew Tate, like the guy's also like a top 0.1%, and I'm sure he spent tons of money on making sure he's getting exposure, because that doesn't come for free, And sure, it comes for free again if you're a talent, but that's not something like you want to count on, because then you may as well just buy a lottery ticket every single day and just hope you win. It's like the same like chances you essentially have in life. So 100%. That's why I highly recommend everyone what I just advised, and I fully stand behind that. And if you don't, then try it and let me know how you're doing in a year from now. And if I'm wrong,
dude,
you know that too. So,
dude, can I give you this as a one-man show got me to $1 million a year, one-man show with a YouTube channel and a book a call link in the description. That was it, right? And if it works as a one-man show with no operational leverage in my company, no larger understanding of business, no leadership skills, zero leadership skills at the time, zero ability to operate an actual business. If it can get that person to $1 million a year, it can easily get you with your operations and leadership ability to multiple 8 figures. It's a framework that I learned actually from, where did I learn this? I can't remember. But I call it the trifecta of influence. It's like a triangle. Right. And so for your brand, dude, like everything that you're mentioning, all these top dogs, dude, they have 3 things. They are an attractive character, which means they have a background, values, a story of why they do what they do today, what got them to where they are, right? Yeah. And they have a little bit of controversy. So they're just right on the edge. So they're worth discussing, right? Yeah. So background, story, values, worth discussing, controversy, as well as living out the ideal of their ideal prospects. So living the life of the people they want to serve, right? Yeah. So you mentioned like, every example you just mentioned, you can see this. Yeah. Then on the other side of the triangle, so the bottom right of the triangle, is a new opportunity, something they've never heard of before, something that they might not have heard of or have heard of but haven't heard presented that way. And you're almost presenting this as like, look, if you want to be like me, you've got this thing you can do, right? You can see this trend across all of them. And then on the other side of the triangle is a cause, like a really deeply rooted reason that you can see in all of their content for why they do what they do. Yeah. When I learn, and if you can cement that reason into your content, then that trifecta creates really potent content, really potent, almost energetic content. People can't ignore it. They want to do business with you. They want to buy your stuff because you are the character that they want to follow. You have an opportunity that they believe in, and the reason why you're doing it is something that they can get behind. If you have those 3, dude, people will pay attention to you, and they'll talk about you. They'll share your content. Like, as a one-man show, brother, I didn't even have an editor, literally. One-man show, $1 million a year, just understanding that trifecta. So I'd make a piece of content, and I'd think, I want to communicate all 3 pillars of this trifecta as much as I possibly could. And that's, dude, if you go back to like 2018, 2019, Trey Cockrum YouTube, like you can see me pulling every single string on that trifecta, and I did it pretty poorly, honestly, but it still worked, So, bro, like, as you move forward, like, that frame, I forget where I learned it. I wish I could give proper credit, but that framework got me to $1 million a year with my personal brand.
It's valuable. Man. Yeah. It's gonna be a whole new project, man. Like, branding. I don't know what people think exactly when they see my name. I think, assumptions will be client results. I think organic marketing, but you can see like it's not a mass market or wide society impact message. It's just focus on the business and conversion and client results, and that's kind of like the skeleton and meat slapped on it. But yeah, the next step definitely is going to be like that mass market, just stepping into that. And it's so funny, like how there's a clear difference between B2B and B2C, because like in B2C you get so much hate. You get a lot more people just being very skeptical, insanely skeptical, and then you get like B2B is like, oh, that guy's look good, I pay him 100K, it's like just a world of difference, but
totally.
And even like with Tate and Iman, like dude, any top level, you just look at the comments, there's always like 10, 20, maybe even 30, 50, but would take probably 80% like just people hating on the guy. But then when
it's constant.
Like, outside of the social media platform, people talk about him, it's like, I respect that guy. The guy's just solid. Yeah. And I think that's, if you focus on that instead of like all the bad things that would happen with this, because people forget about the comments, right? Because if you think of like the latest comment you read, like I can't recall one, right? As I'm sure you cannot either. And it's just going to be such a big step into something that is just very, very different from like running a coaching business, and basically help people with like marketing, sales, and all that stuff. So
100%.
It's gonna be a very, very exciting project.
Dude, kind of a little bit off topic and maybe not like as valuable as some of this other stuff, but just regarding people's perception of you, I have a really funny story. This happened at my wedding. Literally my wedding day, two things happened. Two things happened that was like, whoa, this is like blowing my mind. First of all, this is a hilarious story, dude. And it's like family lore now because it's just so funny. Yeah. So my dad was my best man at my wedding. He gives a speech, obviously, but my brothers, I've got 3 brothers. They all gave speeches as well. They were all super meaningful. One of my younger brothers, Zane, he gave this speech, and it was just this moving, beautiful speech about how he's learned vicariously through Lily and I's relationship, how to have his own relationship, and he's like, he feels like he can look up to me as his brother, and all just these beautiful things. And he ends it with, and I'll end it here, and he's like, you can go ahead and DM me start today if you want to learn how to have a relationship like what Trey has. And so I was like, bro, like, it's so funny. People don't understand how effective that is. And it's just like people's perception is skewed. And the other story that happened was one of my wife's family members, like aunt or something, like second aunt or something, was like, hey Trey, is this you messaging me on Instagram? And I'm like, no, that's not me, it's a scam, it's one of those crypto people, it's on my wedding day, bro. And I'm like, no, that is not me, my only account is at TREYCOCKRUM, no dots, no underscores, no nothing. And it was so funny, bro. Lily and I were cracking up, dude. It's just so funny, like, you have to just get really comfortable with these weird, awkward moments, like in your life when you do what we do, because it's just like people don't get it, man, and it's very strange feeling like almost like an outsider almost. But yeah, like my brother saying DM me start at the end of his speech, which is, bro, I was crying laughing, bro. It was so funny, dude.
That is hella funny. Hella funny.
Yeah, dude. Oh my goodness, it's too funny.
So funny. Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like beginners, and when I say beginners, I don't mean to like, make the come across like we look down on you. Like, beginners just don't understand the coaching space. This thing just lingo, how you do marketing, all that stuff, right? So it's but that's like what I'm saying, right? Like it's entering an entire new bubble, and I'm sure you're going to be making the same move even like a wider scale quite soon, right? Like after you hit like the benchmarks you set to achieve too, and you're working on the things you're working on. But man, I think like that is the most valuable thing. Like having a brand that people trust is far more valuable than any fiat money in your bank or any crypto. Like having influence, I think, is one of the most powerful things that any entrepreneur or any man, can truly have.
Absolutely, dude. And I think a part of why the traditional education system works so well, like you're talking about beginners being very skeptical, I think a part of why the traditional education system works so well, and especially colleges work so well, is they play on the biases of people. Like there's a bias in social status of having gone to a certain college. So there's a status of, oh, I went here. right? So it's the first thing that they play on, and they advertise on. If you look at their advertisements, their marketing, it's like, be one of us, go to Harvard, or be one of us, go to this school. Like in Indiana, there's certain schools that have more or less status, right? So it's a status play. It's also marketed as a security play. So status and security, two base desires that humans have. They play on these. And then the final one, and this is a critical one, is the certificate, the degree, the piece of paper that says you've done it. And dude, I think as you're going B2C, just kind of like just some thoughts. If I were making a similar shift, I would think status, security, certificate. Like if you handed out like, here's your certificate, you're now a certified appointment setter, right? And like the industry would start to pick up on it that this actually does mean something because you're really good at training people. Yeah. Right. They could like hang it up on their wall. Like, I'm a certified appointment setter. I'm certified at getting appointments on. Like, bro, that stuff does so well. Like it's like what's her name? There's this lady who life coach school. She has this like, you become she's got this certificate for coaches. You are now a certified life coach, and people like, they need to know that there's a completion. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Exactly, man. Like that's the thing with the world today. What I'm seeing is you don't lead with logic, you lead with beliefs. So if you outline, the fact that our program is between 4 to 6K, it takes 60 days, so you can make 5 to 10K a month right after the certification process, like no waiting. And you outweigh with like university, which is like 100, 150K, and takes 4 or 8 years, and you're not guaranteed a job. If you say that to people, they'll find a reason to bash like the, offer we, for example, have. And I think, of course, it has to do with trust, but also with the fact that their beliefs are so ingrained in the fact that this is like university is the way to go. Whereas if you ask me, like, sure, I can give you a certification as an appointment setter, but as a business owner, if I get an application and you show me your certification, I'll tell you, I really don't give a crap about your certification. Like, what is your experience? So I mean, on the marketing stance, it would probably work as you're suggesting 100%, but like from a business owner POV too, right? Like, unless it becomes something credible and like a real thing in the industry, it really holds no tangible value, right? Because 100%. If you'd get an email today, Trey, and someone says like, "Hey, I'm certified appointment setter," you'd probably just open an email and
I would totally ignore it. I would totally ignore it. And I'm not even saying that it would necessarily pick up speed. I'm just saying, like, I'm seeing the people who really like multiple 8 figures B2C, they play on those lever points, including colleges. Yeah.
It's smart and it works. But, I think that with time too, what's going to happen is that these people that will get certificates from education companies, unless it becomes something really meaningful or trained up to a certain standard, they'll get caught up quite quickly that every business owner will tell them, like, I don't care about your certificate. And then the word spread in the community, like, oh, hey, Bass, I showed my certificate. Or, hey, guys, anyone else like that showed your certificate and, they didn't really care. Like, I think it's really, like, I guess
it's a thin line you have to walk. You have to be very careful when you, like, 'cause I agree. Like, maybe there could be a certificate of completing the program, which is like, doesn't matter at all. But then maybe they get one for like once they've generated $1 million in cash for somebody. You know what I mean? Some things like this, because I think that could be like a very reasonable way of approaching it that adds like a lot of status to your students.
I agree. Yeah. If I had to pick, I'd probably do the certification, what you're saying, because like it's already ingrained in people's beliefs. And it makes sense too, because after completion of it, giving it to someone just for like their own beliefs to like, hey, wow, I actually, got the certificate. Yep. I think that because it's tangible, it means something. I remember like Ty Lopez did it too, and people just love it because it's just, brains, and they feel proud, and that pride is retranslates into confidence. So
it's like the reason why you have the 2 comma back there. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a status thing. Like it spreads word. And do people abuse that status symbol for ill gain? 100%. But have other people actually done it the right way and served people along the way? And like it's just there to show you that I'm a part of that club. That's very true as well. Same reason why people like wear a nice watch or drive a nice car. It's just like it puts you in a club. You know what I mean? And like, dude, why would the fact that colleges sell merch tells you everything you need to know. You know what I mean? Like they make so much money from merchandising, it's absurd. Like like literally go look it up sometime. Harvard merchandising is crazy. They make so much money selling Harvard merchandising. And like that tells you everything you need to know about like their business model.
I think universities make a lot of bank, man. I think they make a crazy bank, and
it's absurd. And it's untaxable too, you know that?
I did not know that, but
It's untaxable.
That is good to know. That's a good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is crazy. And that's what I'm saying, man. Coaching bubble's so small. I should probably just open up like a second Harvard and just like bring that figures.
Yeah, just open up the appointment setting Harvard University, bro. Untaxable, and you can get loans for $80,000 from 17-year-old kids who don't know better. Why wouldn't you? It's crazy, dude. It's evil, honestly. I hate to joke about it because I think it's a terrible business model.
But that's the thing, like what I'm saying, right? And it all starts with like leadership, masculinity, like doing your own research. And like, again, the message Tate stands for is just, you see those things like in a different light with time. And that's the perception you should like allow yourself to emerge into, because that's what's going to breed the life that you want. And I think getting out of that is so difficult. That's like, you know, you and I both followed Sam Robbins, like with the mindset stuff. Mm-hmm. You need more mindset at the beginning than you need business, to be honest. And then later on, you need more business than you need mindset. And that's same like with the time and money. Like at the beginning, you need more money than you're going to need time. And then later you need more time as you need money, right? Which is kind of like why I'm making this transition too. So yeah, man, it's a very interesting journey. And you see, like, you got to be like just flexible all the time. You got to be like Bruce Lee says, essentially like water, be able to adapt to the situation that arises. And I think that's another thing that can only come with leadership. So it's so funny how so many things just stem from that. And if you don't have it, you're going to have a very tough time.
Yeah,
very tough time.
100%, dude. Well, I think this has been a great podcast, man. I think this is a good place to wrap. You think so?
All good.
Yeah.
I like it a lot, man.
Very, very good. I think this is a great conversation. If you've watched this far, I mean, definitely be sure to check out Bass and follow along his journey. I don't know, Bass, if you're going to post this or what you're going to do with it, but
I'll share it on my socials for sure, man. This was
man. I whatever you want to do with it. So, yeah, it's been an awesome conversation, dude. Killer conversation. It's a pleasure having you on here. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, brother.
Yeah, very good. All right, dude. If you enjoyed this clip and you want to mentor directly underneath me and learn all the strategies that we've implemented into our students' businesses to help over 100 people reach 6 figures a year, 100 to $999,000 a year, and over, I think it's 15 students as of January 2023 to $1 million a year or more, then I want you to go ahead and schedule your completely free consultation with us. There's no pressure to make a decision. We're not going to force your hand. We're just trying to figure out what it is that you need in order to take that next step to either start your online consulting or coaching business in any niche, any industry, or take your existing consulting or coaching business and really scale it to that next level in order to really sustain a business, put a lot of money in the bank very quickly, and serve a lot of people. Okay, so you can use the pinned comment on this video, or if you're listening on our podcast, go to treycockrum.com/schedule-page, and you can check out that page. It's just a simple schedule page. If you fill out a form and we want to know a bit about you, a bit about where you're coming from and what's motivating you to even speak with us so that we can make sure we give you the best options. And if we notice that you're honestly not in the best place to get started, whether that's financially or time constraints or otherwise, we'll make some other suggestions to you, okay? Our reputation is everything to us, so we're only going to really make offers to people we know for a fact that we can help. And even if we don't make you an offer, it will still be some of the best 45 to 60 minutes you've spent on your business this year, because you're gonna get a custom strategy and be told exactly what you should do next, okay? So book your free consultation using the link in the description or in the pinned comment, or if you're listening on a podcast, treycockrum.com/schedule-page. See you there.